So as Wendy Alexander was indicating, budget discussions continuing, negotiations, always a time, of course, for wrangling, even within a political party. But with a minority in administration at Holyrood, the intrigue moves to a whole different level as various parties attempt to trade support for policies. The Scottish Greens are trying to get the SNP government to back an innovative scheme to insulate people's homes free of charge. David Allison reports now from West Yorkshire, where the UK's first such scheme is up and running.
Although best known for the woolen industry, Huddersfield also gave the world rugby league, the rules of which were formulated at this hotel. The town also gave the world a Prime Minister in the shape of Harold Wilson. Like the square where his statue presides, Huddersfield isn't finished yet. It wants to give something else to the world. For 2 years, Kirklees Council's operated a £21 million scheme called Warm Zone. Free of charge, whether you're a council tenant or a private householder, they'll come round and insulate cavity walls and lofts. So far, around half the properties in the borough have been done, and once complete, they reckon they'll save £4.5 million a year in energy bills. A quick job, but a long-term benefit.
The average house, depending on its size, is 3 to 4 hours, and the benefits vary from 30 to 35% of the heat gain once the property is being insulated.
So it's a pretty good deal from the householder's point of view.
It certainly is. It's well worth having.
The principle is simple enough. You ring up the council, you ask them to get the cavity wall insulation, they come along, check it out, send someone along a few weeks later, and you've got it. No means testing and no admin. The idea was a Green Party initiative endorsed by all the other groups on the council. Even the potentially controversial approach of not means testing householders for financial contributions didn't make political waves. So why not?
If you actually look at what the government gives in terms of rebates, tax rebates, hundreds of pounds here, hundreds of pounds there, this is no different from that. It's only a few £100 is the cost of this insulation. And if the government is serious about trying to reduce carbon emissions, if the government is serious about trying to boost the economy, if it's serious about us trying to reduce people's fuel bills, then this is exactly the sort of scheme that we want. This is an economic regeneration scheme as well as a way of us tackling climate change.
It's not just the cavity walls which are changing, so are the loft spaces across the borough. Lagging in the loft became a bit of a political buzzword last year when energy companies came under pressure over soaring prices, and Scottish Power is funding over 50% of the Warm Zone scheme. For those who get it done, the result can be worth up to £250 a year off their heating bills.
It was a big difference, yeah, because the heating wasn't on full blast. It wasn't on top, which it was before it was put in. So
it was a cold house before?
It's extremely cold, is that house, especially with the conservatory on. So it helped, and it was noticeable, right from the word go. From the word go, yeah.
The council's proud of its scheme. It's the first thing you notice at the roundabout as you enter Huddersfield. And in the borough, you come across signs like this everywhere, reminding you about energy use, generation, and savings. And it's in power generation that the other strand of environmental policy comes into play.
What we've got here, we've got a mix of council houses and new build housing association houses. We've got 121 properties which have got solar power for their electricity and also for the hot water. And so we've got people on relatively low incomes who are actually getting a benefit from renewable energy on their homes. And this is what we'd like to see a lot more of right the way across the country. This is the future.
The deal on offer is an attractive one for householders. For no upfront cost, the council will install solar panels, the balance payable when the property's sold. But why subsidise those who could probably afford to do it anyway?
If they could afford it, they'd be installing it now. The question is, are we actually wanting people to reduce their carbon emissions? Are we wanting people to use more renewable energy? At the moment, the industry is quite small. We're wanting that industry to grow. We're wanting more and more people to get used to using it on their properties, and we're actually wanting people to be able to reduce their ongoing costs as well.
So, in the walls and roofs of this Pennine town, a quiet revolution is underway, and one which appears to be catching on elsewhere. The town, built on wool from the moors of West Yorkshire, and the birthplace of rugby league, is now offering something else to the world. Now, what would Harold Wilson have made of that?
What indeed? Well, let's talk now with the Scottish Green Party's co-leader, Patrick Harvie, MSP, is here. Can we afford to do something like this Scotland-wide?
Absolutely. I would argue that we can't really afford not to. The benefits are so multiple. The benefits are, yes, climate change, reducing our emissions. That's something that all parties agree is urgent. But also cutting people's fuel bills. You know, there's no better time to do that than when economic times are hard. And supporting jobs in the construction sector so that some of those young apprentices we saw earlier in your programme have more chance of getting a job when they're going out into the job market.
You're asking ministers to spend £100 million a year in each of the next 10 years on this, but yet there are only, what, 2 votes in it for the SNP government. Have you got a deal?
It's a pretty small proportion of the overall Scottish budget, but £100 million a year is our estimate of what it would cost. If John Swinney wants to come back and tell us that actually there are higher cost savings because of the volume of the scheme, or because you know, they can cut the cost in other ways, we want to talk about those numbers. At the moment, though, I have a real concern that the SNP just don't grasp the scale of what's necessary. Running another couple of wee pilot projects, there's a few of those around the country already. Another couple of those won't cut it. We need to be upping the ambition dramatically.
And are you bluffing when you say you won't vote for it if you don't get, you won't vote for the budget if you don't get this?
No, it's not a bluff and it's not a threat. It's our long-standing position. There's too much in the budget that we don't support. We need something new to support it.
Patrick Harvie, co-leader of the Scottish Greens, thanks very much indeed. That's your lot from the Politics Show for another week. Enjoy the rest of